So anyway, got to thinking the other day about digital media, and there seems to be a lot of talk out there at the moment about how does digital media, specifically, with this Pokemon Go phenomena that's been going around, people walking around streets, looking at their devices and trying to play these games, and then I noticed that a lot of businesses were actually trying to take advantage of that. So I thought I'd bring a guest on to the show to talk about this, because he's a great friend of mine. I've known him for several years, and he is Mr. Digital in my mind. And let's bring him on. Derek, how are you? This is Derek Stumfall from GeoWiz. Before we go into this digital media phenomena that's been going around and it seems to be in the news every single day, tell me a little bit more about yourself and where have you been and what you've been doing.
Sure. Most of my background, at least professionally, has been outside the United States. I got my career started here in the Dallas area with a group called Westcott Communications. We were one of the early leaders in distance learning. We created television networks for vertical industries, government entities, professions, et cetera, for continuing education, in-service training, et cetera, with a high production value. From there, I moved to United Press International and eventually ended up running the Asia Pacific division out of Hong Kong. Stayed on there, got the entrepreneurial bug in Hong Kong, started some magazines that we delivered into the hotel world, into the guest room of five-star hotels around Southeast Asia. Eventually did another startup with the online trading, with the web-based online trading across multiple currencies, multiple equities, etc. Went to work within the hotel consulting business, and then wanted to get back into media, and hence GeoWiz was the channel for that.
So GeoWiz, okay, you just mentioned GeoWiz. I've seen it, I've played it, and it's absolutely, it's capturing. It really is. Tell me more about what GeoWiz is first.
Sure. Well, just a little bit about the background. I was at a client's house in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and their kids came to me and they said, "Uncle Derek, will you bring us something back from Sydney when you come back through Dhaka?" And so I did, and when I gave them their gifts, and I saw their eyes light up in which they realized the world where they lived, it was much bigger than the place in which they lived, I thought that's pretty magical. Then we started seeing how could we commercialize this. We looked at television, we looked at board games, but when we saw the most frequently forms of media being consumed by kids and youth today, it was the virtual worlds. And there have been so many created, in fact, that we believe that virtual worlds are more than just a product. They have now become a channel of communication. So it's a combination of augmented reality, virtual reality, gamification, apps, animation, digital images. But all this combined together is a really unique way to craft a message for businesses or organizations and more fun.
It's funny that you should talk about that, about how it engages with kids. I mean, I watch my kids all the time, and they're playing on these interactive games. And, if in fact, we went out the other day to a store and got one of these games, and within an hour, my kid came back and said, "Can I go back to the store and get another game?" And I said, "You just got that one." He said, "Well, I've gone through all the levels. I know it." And so what had happened was, in a few hours, he'd learnt all the different things, and he was learning through this interactive experience. So I'm pretty sure that that's how this works with GeoWiz, is it?
Absolutely, and the key word that you said is interactive. I don't think it's too bold of a statement to say that this digital media that's out there will very likely prove to be as powerful as Gutenberg's movable type. It represents a fundamental shift in media from being something that one passively reads, watches, listens to, etc., into something where someone interacts with. It's genuinely participatory media now. So as you've mentioned from the experience with your children, there's a whole generation of digital natives for whom this is the way that they interact with content. They want a participatory, not just a passive experience. So it influences how they learn, what they look for when they shop, how they shop, where they go, their entertainment decisions and experiences as well. So it's raised the bar up to where this is now the expectation. Involve me in what you're trying to communicate to me.
Why do you think that GeoWiz is going to be successful and impactful, especially in businesses? Why do you think that?
Well, most of these things that have been created have to deal. There's a fantasy element there. It's in a fictionalized setting from a content perspective. We're taking that experience that from millennials all the way down to kids, what they're used to, but we're saying let's put real messages, nonfiction. Could be a product message. It could be an experience. It could be the mission of some sort of charitable organization. It could be a destination that you want to visit. And we believe that the medium itself is very, very powerful. But now let's craft a message around something that is nonfiction, that's actually real, that's not fantasy, and that has a real opportunity to connect that audience with that company and organization. So we think we're filling a need out there that's going to just explode in terms of demand. How do you provide immersive experiences for your audience?
So how do one of the things that I was always made me think about these experiences, the digital experiences. How do people adopt a new platform like yours? I mean, how do you go out to market? What is the way that somebody can get in front of GeoWiz, both from a business standpoint and from a consumer standpoint? What's that look like?
Sure. I mean, a good place for information is at our website, GeoWiz, GeoWhiz.com. They can get some information about us. But basically what we do is that we create an environment where you create and customize an avatar. Now, our primary market is for kids and youth. And so in the U.S., and you have this in other markets as well, you have the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act. So that dictates that you can't put out personally identifiable information that's out there. So that regulatory environment fits well with the creation of an avatar so that you can use that as your place of interface. But when we go to a business, an organization, et cetera, to go pitch them on why GeoWiz is good for them, most consumer, most audience, most experiences are thought of at the time of consumption. And I think it also speaks to some of the magic potential of this new type of media, is that it extends that period beyond just the time of consumption to prior to it, to build excitement, to create information, to get people involved prior to the experience, enhance the actual time of experience, and then also provide an opportunity to engage with your customers, target customers, your audience, after the time of media. So it takes real experiences and expands the timeline that you can interact with your customers with.
No, that makes sense. And in terms of let's use that as an example as a Pokemon Go. Everybody's been talking about it, like I said in the intro. But how is this type of thing going to impact businesses and culture? I mean, I know you've just touched on a little bit of that, but how is it going to touch on that in future?
Well, arguably, Pokemon Go was one of the great sensations of the summer months, and at least in the northern hemisphere of 2016. And everybody was doing it, to the point where you heard stories of people almost getting run over, people bumping into things, people wandering aimlessly around parks.
Right.
It demonstrated the power of the medium, the power of the technology. The one thing that for businesses, and businesses used it a lot to drive traffic. So, for example, shopping malls were using it to drive traffic because there's been a fall off on brick and mortar shopping because of the fact that so many people shop online. They were using Pokemon Go to recreate the experience that was associated with actually physically being there. No offense to the creators of Pokemon Go, because you can't argue with their success, But Niantic and Nintendo are far more important. They're far more concerned with you finding Pikachu than they are with interacting with your message, with your products, with your services. So part of what we're doing, and again, we believe that it illustrates the power of it, is taking the strength of that media, but instead of them finding Pikachu or some of these other characters, find out something about your business, your products, your services, your mission, your organizational goals, etc.
You just talked about, the decision is based on at the time of consumption. One of the big things that I used to, there's a word that I don't know where I got it from, but I've been using it for years. It's called pester power.
Yes.
And pester power is, if my kid comes to me and says, I want to do this, and because they've gone and seen this or experienced it, and the person that's got the actual dispensable income to actually go and do it for them is their mum and dad, or their granddad, or their grandma. And so I call it pester power. And I think that that's one of the things that we're seeing in this environment. And GeoWiz, from what you're saying, can actually serve that message up and then allow the interactive player to consume that message and then go, I want to go and do that. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of our big buckets that we're selling into is the travel, tourism, and hospitality. Increasingly, kids influence where do we go, how do we get there, what do we do while we're there, and where do we stay while we're there. Well, there's the hotel, the travel business has realized the power of the family and multi-generational travel segment and the influence of kids. However, most of the time they communicate to the adults. Well, there's a huge, huge influence, not only for some sort of future decision, but a call to action and a purchase immediately if you start crafting that message towards kids. Well, you need to do it in a fun and entertaining way. You also need to do it in an interactive way, because these kids and millennials, kids up to millennials, are digital natives, that you've got to connect with them the way that they connect with media. That's real critical there. And so for example, within a hotel environment, instead of telling the kids about the amenities and services you have on offer for them in a list, well, no kid's going to find a list to be very interesting. Right. We can create digital images of those experiences so that they can actually experience that, walk through that, examine it with their avatars, interacting within digital representations of what you have on offer.
Yeah, I think the travel industry is a prime area, I would think, for you. I mean, as you know, we produce a lot of travel shows, and that's education of that age sector is a missing link, and I think it's a golden area that I think you're going to really do well in. And I'm going to put a lot more information, Derek, up on the website about your company, and how the viewers can actually go and see how GeoWiz can maybe fit into their world. And I'll put a link on there how to get hold of you. But I really appreciate you giving us an insight into digital media and specifically GeoWiz. Thanks, Derek. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Carl.